Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 5:07 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. A good Tuesday morning to one and all, and thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Hans von Spakovsky. Good morning, Hans.
Hey, good morning, Julie. I know I'm not Larry O'Connor.
You are not, but we had a lot of fun yesterday.
We did,
and you are back for one more day. We do have a great show today at 6:05. We'll talk to Daniel Turner. He's executive director of Power the Future. He'll talk about Lee Zeldin being the pick for EPA. At 6:35, we'll interview Mark Mix, president of National Right to Work Foundation. We'll talk about Trump's win and the future of right to work. At 7:05, we'll talk to Dr. Kevin Roberts. You know Dr. Kevin Roberts.
I do know Dr. Roberts, since he's my boss at the Heritage Foundation.
You will be very polite during
I
that
will.
interview. He's got a new book, Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. Boy, what a timely book. At 7:35, Emily Goodwin, senior White House correspondent at the Daily Mail. And at 8:35, we will interview Carrie Pickett. She's at the Washington Times. She's got some interesting news about this Pennsylvania race. Republicans have offered to escort Dave McCormick to the Senate orientation in defiance of Schumer. So that will be interesting. Great show coming up. Hans, the rumor mill is in full force in Washington.
That's right.
I got to tell you, this is the most fun part post-election, is seeing sort of people, really gunning for certain positions, the sort of horse trading that you see. We do have some named people. The transition has named them. Tom Homan, border czar. That is so exciting. Elise Stefanik, UN ambassador, and Lee Zeldin for EPA administrator. Yesterday, there were some rumors, for instance, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. That sort of went wild on Twitter. But in fact, I haven't seen anything from the Trump transition team, nor
if you
Marco
look,
Rubio.
Yeah, if you look at the original story, for example, at Fox, it said a source told Fox that. So we have no idea whether that's really true or not. Right now, resumes by the truckload are arriving at Mar-a-Lago for all the positions within the federal government. And for folks who don't realize it, listen, the federal government has, I think, over 2 million federal employees, but almost all of them are career people. The president gets about between 3,000 and 4,000 political appointees.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, one other person, Stephen Miller, named Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy. This really signifies a focus on immigration along with Tom Homan, who will actually be a border czar who focuses on the border. That's kind of a real telltale sign.
And look, there's already stories out about how the Border Patrol agents, everybody, their morale is rising because now they'll actually be able to do their job.
Yeah, exactly. I read that too. Also, late in his Kristi Noem has been picked as his Homeland Security Secretary. That kind of surprises me, frankly. I think you mentioned while we were talking just a few minutes ago that you could see her being interior. And I agree with that. But it looks like... Yeah,
look, if Donald Trump thinks she'll do a good job, that's great. I just, my fear always with governors is governors are able to run their executive branches. When they tell a department to do something, those department people do it. I'm not sure she's going to have to get used to the resistance within the swamp, which really exists inside the federal bureaucracy.
Well, I also, and honestly, I don't know too much about her, but after what we've seen with the Secret Service and after what we've seen with FEMA, I was really hoping for a reformer, someone who, and frankly, a little bit more Homeland Security experience, that would really break it up, which is what has to happen. So I feel like that's kind of an odd choice. We'll see. A lot of people were really hoping, and I've seen this on Twitter, there seems to be an agreement that Rick Grinnell would have been a great choice for Secretary of State. Right now, obviously, the rumor is Marco Rubio.
Right.
But Rick Grinnell, my goodness, if you look at what he did when he was ambassador to Germany, and he is the very reason that Germany contributed more to the NATO budget. And he was the one, for all this talk of Trump being soft on Russia, he is the one that really warned Germany not to become dependent on Russian energy.
Right.
He would be an excellent Secretary of State. What are your feelings on Rick Grinnell?
Look, he would. And all those who said that, Trump, again, Trump was soft Russia. Listen, it was Trump and his folks who were really pushing the Europeans and the EU to finally start spending the kind of money on their defense budgets that they needed to. Because for decades, they haven't been doing it. They instead have been relying on us. And he's the one that has pushed them to do that. And in the light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that was so obvious that they should have been doing it all along.
Well, and as I mentioned, last night when the announcement came out, and again, this appears to be, I don't know if it's false, but it doesn't. We haven't heard anything from the Trump transition team about Marco Rubio. In my mind, I thought, then Rick Grinnell, maybe he'll go to DHS because he is such a reformer. What he did with the Office of Director of National Intelligence, cutting unneeded positions, sending people back to their home agencies so that they would have more of an impact. He saved millions on that agency. So I thought, he's a reformer. Maybe he'll go to DHS. Maybe that's the thinking here. And then Kristi Noem. So now I'm totally confused. I have no idea what's happening. But I really am holding out. I hope Marco Rubio's great. No, but I'm sort of wearing my preference here out on my sleeve because I think Rick Grinnell really did a lot.
I agree. But look, right now it's still too early to tell because is there a bigger gossip mill than Washington D.C.? I don't know of one.
I love it.
Yeah.
I do love it. And also we're hearing rumors about CIA as well. Kash Patel, who is a big ally of the president, possibly him taking over CIA. So we will be watching this, or FBI. I've heard him mentioned for FBI as well.
And both of those agencies need major cleanouts when you consider how involved they got in the political arena, particularly the CIA.
Well, and again, Kash was one of the first people to come out about the Russia collusion hoax and expose it for what it was and warn the president and of everyone in Washington. My goodness, did he take a lot of heat for that. And so I hope in terms of rewarding loyalty, I hope the president remembers what Kash did because that wasn't easy back then to go against sort of the mob. We'll have more on the Trump transition and so much more. Keep it here. It's 5.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So, Hans, people who are really concerned about the border, I think, are very pleased with this sort of Stephen Miller being named Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy. And again, sort of along with Homan, this signifies that Trump is going to take the border very seriously.
Oh yeah. He couldn't have found anybody who is either more knowledgeable or more serious about securing the border, for example, than Tom Homan. And Homan knows how to do it. And you saw yesterday, he was warning the governors of sanctuary states and elsewhere that the federal government's not going to allow them to frustrate their enforcement of federal immigration law. And look, this is one area where the federal government is supreme when it comes to immigration, and states do not have the right, for example, to stop immigration enforcement, no matter what they claim about being sanctuaries.
I think one of the things that sort of excites me the most is that Homan is not apologetic about his positions, and we've seen that in clip after clip after clip where they sort of the media does these gotcha moments like, how could you should the elderly grandma, they always go to the most unlikely of those who would be the focus of deportation and ask about that, but Homan does not back off. One want to go back to Stephen Miller. Here, let's play cut one.
I want you to think for a minute about the decades of abuse that has been heaped upon the good people of this nation. Their jobs looted and stolen from them and shipped to Mexico, Asia, and foreign countries. The lives of their loved ones ripped away from them by illegal aliens, criminal gangs, and thugs who don't belong in this country. I'm not just saying that. You've read the stories. It happens every day. You read one of these heartbreaking headlines. Who's going to stand up for our daughters? Who's going to stand up for the girls of America, the women of America, the families of America? Who's going to stand up and say the cartels are gone, the criminal migrants are gone, the gangs are gone, America is for Americans and Americans only?
You know, during the campaign, you heard about, we know the stories of, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, which was sort of, really brought attention to that issue. But what was so depressing was to hear about these towns of like 4,000 people suddenly getting 2,000 migrants into the town and having to support those new people into the town, and how it would destroy these small towns. A lot of these towns were in Ohio, Springfield, and a couple other Ohio towns. And people are tired of this. They, and Americans are so generous, but there is a limit.
Right. And the issue here in the political arena is the left, the left-stream media, if we can call them that, so the mainstream media, they try to paint anyone who wants to actually enforce our laws on immigration, and particularly on illegal immigration, as being anti-immigrant. That is completely false.
Right.
We take in more legal immigrants a year than any other nation in the world, 1.1 million.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we've got to allow people to get in illegally. And in fact, it's basically an insult to those who play by the rules to do it legally, to suddenly say, oh, illegal aliens that come in, right, we're going to treat you like your citizens.
Of course, the left, and by the left I mean the so-called Republican Ana Navarro, are, of course, freaking out. This was her, probably on The View. I'm not sure if it was on The View yesterday, but she was reacting to Tom Homan being named Border Czar. Cut 2.
This is what the country voted for. This is, a lot of people thought that when he talked about mass deportations, he wasn't being serious. I don't know how many times he had to say it for people to realize he was being serious. Well, if you thought he wasn't being serious, the appointment of Tom Homan today as border czar, and he will be in charge of a mass deportation program, the largest the country has ever seen, they say. And now Stephen Miller, as deputy chief of staff, should let you know that he was absolutely serious. And when you talk about mass deportations, people think, oh, it's just going to be the criminals. There's not enough criminals, aliens in the federal prison system for it to be mass deportations. What it means is grandmothers. What it means is brothers and aunts. Yep. What it means is abuelos y abuelas. It means dreamers. It means your family members. It means your colleagues. It means your friends. It means people who are part of the society. And look, America, those of you who voted for Trump, this is what you wanted. This is what you voted for. You screwed around and you're about to find out.
Yeah, I love the idea that Ana Navarro is really shocked that that politicians keep their promises occasionally. Yes.
Yeah, isn't
he
that
made
something?
a campaign promise to
Right.
deport illegal aliens, and yes, they're going to follow through with it. We will cover more of this in a moment. We've got lots to get to, but right now it is 5:22 on WMAL.
We're not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Homan,
Look,
please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
I've asked you politely to let me go beyond my time, and you let other
Gentlewoman
people go beyond their time, but not to Tom Homan. He don't get to go beyond his time.
Mr. Homan, we have approved an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats with the ranking member. We increased the time of one member of Congress who was interrupted by a protest. That is done with the approval of the ranking member. Please respect the chair's authority.
I respect the chair's authority, but the chair...
Mr. Homan!
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer.
I love that clip.
I'm a taxpayer. You work for me.
Sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't ending. I love that clip. It shows that he is not playing at all. He is. He's not going to take any of this sort of bloviating from.
That was such a great exchange.
It was.
And I've seen that happen. I've actually testified at hearings, and I've seen chairs who a witness on their side, oh, yeah, sure, you can go over the time limit, but anybody who disagrees, no, you've got the time limit, the red lights come on, you can't talk. And he wasn't going to take that, and good for him.
Yeah, I worked up on Capitol Hill for a decade, and I will tell you it has gotten worse and worse where these members use these hearings to just get up there and bloviate, and there's rarely questions. It's just an opportunity for them to, give a speech. So I love that he said this is a circus. I also want to get, though, to Lee Zeldin. He is now going to be heading Trump's EPA. And I think it's really interesting what he said here. He views EPA as a partner to business, as a way to, look at these regulations and as a way to help businesses and grow the economy. Let's play. I've lost the clip here. Cut 5.
One of the biggest issues for so many Americans was the economy, and the president was talking about unleashing economic prosperity. Through the EPA, we have the ability to pursue energy dominance, to be able to make the United States the artificial intelligence capital of the world, to bring back American jobs to the auto industry, and so much more. President Trump cares about conserving the environment. As you just mentioned in that statement from him, his desire to ensure access to clean air, clean water, it was a top priority.
We are going to talk to Daniel Turner at 6:05 about Lee Zeldin. And also tomorrow, oh my gosh, Tom Homan will be on. So keep it here.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 5:36 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. A good Tuesday morning to one and all. I've got a great show at 6:05. We'll interview Daniel Turner, Executive Director of Power the Future. 6:35, Mark Mix, President, National Right to Work Foundation. 7:05, Dr. Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation. He's got a new book out, Thoughts on Trump's Win, and he'll again talk about his new book, Dawn's Early Light. 7:35, Emily Goodwin, Senior White House Correspondent at the Daily Mail. And 8:35, we'll interview Carrie Pickett of the Washington Times. You are listening to O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry O'Connor alongside Hans von Spakovsky. Good morning, Hans.
Good morning, Julie. I had to adjust the chair. Larry's a little taller than me.
He's a big guy. So more transition news. Looks like Ben Carson. He served as Trump's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the first term. Looks like he is gunning for HHS. I got to say, it makes more sense to me.
Of course, I mean he was a top doctor, in his field, and that's HHS. So that's where he ought to be.
Yeah, and I can see there is some talk of a role for RFK. Obviously, RFK wants a role in the Trump administration. He's got his Make America Healthy Again initiative. I'm not a big fan of RFK for a variety of reasons, but I do think that there is something to this Make America Healthy Again and examining some of these agencies, particularly after COVID. My goodness. And as our producer Heather mentioned to me, she reminded me that RFK has this book about Fauci, which is, of course, incredible. The news is that RFK is saying that 600 people from the National Institute of Health will be fired on day one. That is music to my ears, and I know a lot of other people's ears. And I can see sort of the combination that we were talking about with Stephen Miller and Homan really cleaning up the border. I can see the same combination of Carson at HHS and RFK sort of serving as an advisor on some of the corruption in these agencies being very effective.
Well, yeah, and look, it's every federal agency needs to be reformed from top to bottom.
Everyone.
I mean, we're talking about the ones that make the news most often, but look, I worked in 2 federal agencies, and I can tell you the rot is throughout the entire executive branch, and it's a big executive branch. We should mention, by the way, Fauci, what the news about that the taxpayers paid what was over $15 million to give him private security. This is the guy who You know, I was looking him up. His net worth in like 2022 was over $10 million.
Yeah.
And we're paying for security for him?
At the same time, apparently we can't provide security to our president or our president-elect, and at that time the former president, who had 2 assassination plots against him, and an assassination plot that Iran is also financing. So we're giving $10 million worth, or how much of the $14 million worth of security to Fauci or something?
It was like $15 million is what I read.
It's insane. It's insane. But back to RFK, and on that sort of delicious quote about 600 NIH employees being fired on day one. Let's listen to cut 6. He talks about that.
Donald Trump has said that he would put you in charge of the public health agencies. What exactly does that look like?
Well, he's been very specific in what he said. He wants me to do 3 things. 1, clean up the corruption of the agencies, particularly the conflicts of interest that have turned those agencies into captive agencies for the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry, the other industries that they're supposed to be regulating. Number 2, to return those agencies to the gold standard science, the empirically based, evidence-based medicine that they were famous for when I was a kid. And number 3, to make America healthy again, to end the chronic disease epidemic. And President Trump has told me that he wants to see measurable, concrete results within 2 years in terms of a measurable diminishment in chronic disease among America's kids.
During a separate interview, RFK also said he would clear out entire departments at the FDA if given the opportunity. He said, quote, in some categories, there are entire departments like the nutrition department at the FDA that have to go, that are not doing their job, and they're not protecting kids. So this will be really, I think, interesting to watch. And again, that combination of Ben Carson, such a good man, and he did great at HUD, but I think this is a much more appropriate role for him in the Trump administration.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I keyed on what RFK said was evidence-based work.
Yes.
And the whole problem we've now had for years is politics driving decision-making all over the government, including at the CDC and NIH.
That's right. Well, we've got more coming up. It is 5:42 on WMAL.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
You know, Hans, during the Trump administration, during the Trump years, there was a lot of shifting of media, particularly at Fox. You had a number of Fox contributors that quit Fox sort of in a fury, saying that they thought Fox had gone too far. I think this was mostly because of Tucker, and then Tucker left. And one of those people was Chris Wallace. And we also had Jonah Goldberg and Stephen Hayes leave as well, which is hilarious, has always been hilarious to me, because then they went to NBC. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, just they're so pure. But now it turns out that Chris Wallace is leaving CNN. I think one of the funniest comments I saw from someone yesterday on Twitter was, I had no idea he was still there, because he was part of CNN X, and then that went belly up. But apparently he had another show on CNN. But it is now being reported that Chris Wallace has announced that he will leave the network at the end of his contract, citing the growing influence of podcasters such as Joe Rogan and Charlemagne the God. I refuse to say the God. So Charlemagne the God. Wallace, he joined CNN in January 2022 after nearly 20 years at Fox. He told the Daily Beast he would leave the network at the end of this 3-year contract in favor of independent broadcasting. It looks like Chris Wallace might be sort of understanding the media reality, which is sort of corporate media, cable news networks, sort of the ABC, CBS, NBC. Is not the future of media, and rather independent broadcasting. The Megan Fox, Megyn Kelly. Again, he mentioned Joe Rogan and Charlemagne the God. That is the future of media in this country.
Well, that's true, but look, if you look at the ratings, Fox is constantly, the news channel is constantly stomping CNN was the first
Yep.
Cable news network had a huge audience, and if you want to talk about a great example of mismanagement due to politics, CNN is the prime example of that. They drove all their viewership away because they went from being straight news and providing it pretty objectively to being one of the worst partisans in the whole cable news network sphere.
You know, there was an example last week of a CNN panel, and one of the panelists made a very reasonable remark about how parents don't want boys and girls sports.
Right, explaining what happened in the election. I saw that, yeah.
Yes, and the other panelist, all he said was we do not want, a lot of parents do not want their young girls having to compete against boys.
Right.
And another panelist freaked out and called basically called the panelists who used the word boys, said that he's smearing young, he basically called him transphobic. And it was so insane. And then, of course, Abby Phillips, who is the moderator, she did this, she does this sort of Kamala, I'm talking thing, which is very grating. It devolved into just a yelling match. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody is interested in that.
No.
Oh, do you have that? You have that cut? Yeah, okay, we'll listen to it.
I think there are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen to that.
Let's reset for a second because, look, this is a really heated issue, right? And Sharmichael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
Okay, so right there, she says, all he said was, parents don't want boys playing in girls' sports.
Right.
And then she accuses him of not being respectful.
Right.
Sure, Michael, who is great, by the way. And then this other guy, Jay, who's a lunatic and goes after him. She's sort of saying, no, we have to be careful about Jay's feelings, not the feelings of parents who are watching their girls having to compete against boys.
This is why CNN has no audience. And
Yes.
Jay, he must have gotten an F in biology. Well, these days he'd probably get an A, but in real biology classes, he would have gotten an F when he said boys who think they're girls are really girls. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. But again, this is why, it turns out that issue, boys and girls sports, boys and girls locker rooms, and taking, scholarships and trophies from girls and women, by the way, is one of these very important issues in the election. And here CNN is. 2004 called and they want their language back. We're done with this. We're done with having to use false language to describe this situation.
There was a huge decrease in the support of suburban women for Harris compared to Biden, and I think it's directly because of this issue.
Yeah, well, we will have more on this, but it is 5:52 on O'Connor and Company.